Welcome to Change the Narrative. I'm your host, JD Fuller, an African-American licensed psychotherapist, professor, diversity coach, consultant, and author. We talk about the isms. We talk about the phobias, anything that marginalizes and oppresses. Everything we are not and everything we are is because of fear. Through a mental health lens, we'll have difficult conversations with celebrity guests, political activists, and everyone in between. Our mind will tell us whatever we want to believe, but the truth lives in the body, and that's where change occurs. Are you ready to change the narrative? Hello, Natasha.
Hi.
How are you?
I am doing great, JD. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. First of all, want to thank you for joining on such short notice. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for that.
Wait, short notice? I thought I had like a full 2 days to prepare for this.
Good one. I'll take that. So I'm happy to share space with anybody who knows the people that I know. I really appreciate that, and I love Glenn. I think he's awesome. So I think that's good stuff just to start off the bat. Please tell me, what is the most important thing people need to know about you to get a sense of who you are today?
That is a great question.
Thank you.
There is so much that I can say to that. But when I think about what is most important about me, is that I would like to say I am expansive.
Okay.
I am expansive in a sense that I think every day that I live, I learn a little bit more about who I am as a result of life circumstances, challenges, experiences, good and bad. And just the dynamics of the environment and of the world that we are living in. I think that coming out of a pandemic, many and most of us have been challenged in ways that we have not been challenged before. Many of us have had to exercise and grow muscles that we really did not even know existed. Many of us tested the strength of our resilience, and many of us are learning from where we might not have been the strongest. And so I think when it comes down to who I am as a person, it is ever expansive. It grows as the days go by. And I wanted to begin by describing myself as such because, and correct me if I'm wrong, the question you probably were hinting at, or the answer that you probably was expecting me to say, what I do professionally, what I am into. And generally, when people answer that question, they'll start off by, "Hi, I'm Natasha. I am a human resources practitioner and consultant. I am a certified D&I practitioner and strategist. I lead at the intersections of human resources, employee experience, D&I, with the hopes of..."
No, don't go too far. Don't go too far.
Oh, okay, exactly.
Don't go too far.
Those are the things. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a wife. I'm not a mother. I'm not a daughter. But we have all of these titles of the things of the hats that we wear in society. And for me, it's important for me to begin with who I am. And the definition of who I am, the definition does not change, but it grows. But what is true to me and is always constant, or probably also expansive, are my core values, my fundamental beliefs. And that's why I started where I started.
Yeah. So let's go backwards then and tell me something about your childhood that's important to and the catalyst for your expansiveness.
So about my childhood, many people are shocked or surprised when I say so and try to question me about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I migrated to the United States of America in 2004 for college. I am from the island in the Republic of Haiti.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so I think for me, one of the things that I think my earliest recollection of being a child in Haiti is the embargo of 1991, and just living in the country and just I can't necessarily say much about what I remember, but about that time would be the bullet shots of, after curfew. And I was a kid at that time, probably I'm not gonna say how old, but or how young.
Okay.
But yeah, and so I think for me, growing up in the country, I think that it really, I mean, I loved country. I love the country. I love my childhood, my rearing in Haiti. And I think that coming from a Black republic, which was kind of like very much a melting pot, like here in the US, where you run into white people and Asian people, Lebanese people, and they will all tell you that I'm Haitian, and Haitian to them means I am Black because it is a Black republic. And so we really did not, looking back, we did not really face racism as we have it here in the United States and all of the racial issues that we have. But one of the things that I do know that was very prevalent and has really informed how I have, you know, I have transferred said knowledge into the US is we did have classism. And so oftentimes there are levels of microaggressions in America that most people don't catch on to, but I catch on to because as it relates to classism, it sometimes can be a little bit quieter and subtle, like docile versus like the aggressiveness of racism.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but otherwise, I love it. I love my country. And sadly, because of the political situation back then, my family had to migrate to the country as well. My junior year of college, I would say, yeah, when kidnapping first became a thing,
Mm.
it's now being covered, but by national news. But it was a thing back in 2006, 2007 when my family migrated. But I think that that's an interesting fact about my childhood. Oftentimes, people would question and say, "You don't sound Haitian. You do not look Haitian." What does that mean?
Exactly.
What does that mean? However, um, it does show up sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when I speak. Sometimes I'll have a pause wherein I am hearing the word in French, I see the word in French, and I'm like, okay, what's the proper English translation to that? Or I might see the word in my head. I'm like, okay, that's the spelling, and the pronunciation of the word, I might skip a beat. And I remember my first like recollection in college. I think it was like my junior year. I was taking a communications debate class, and we were doing a Lincoln Douglas debate.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an A minus on a specific debate, my very first debate. And in the commentary, my professor, who was a white male, commented and said, you probably might want to practice pronouncing words that you don't use in your everyday vocabulary. Back then, I was just like, well, that was rude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So I sent my professor an email, and I said, I'm sure if you had an American Airlines ticket dated X, Y, and Z date of first time being in America and learning this country, this language, and adapting to American culture for the first time, you too would probably have the same difficulty pronunciating certain words. But other than that, I'm proud of myself for assimilating so well that you couldn't even tell that I was a foreigner.
But that's disgusting. And you don't have to assimilate. You just have to integrate. And that is so
Well,
disgusting that he said
I
that.
mean, yeah, I mean, but for me, I didn't really understand
Yeah, of
it as
course.
a microaggression
Of course.
because we don't have those in my country. And I was new to the US. I
Mhm.
didn't really understand that. But miraculously, my A minus turned into an A plus.
Exactly.
Um,
As well it should have.
and so in today's world, we would really look at that as a microaggression. And those never really stop.
And
They
this is
continue.
why, but see, Natasha, this is why I don't call them microaggressions, because that was painful as you were telling the story. And that's a wound. And there's nothing small about that. And it probably was in some ways what led you to the work you're in. And so while it is a part of making you who you are, it's so offensive and hurtful. I'm sorry you experienced that, really.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I still remember that professor till this day, and I'll go on record to say that he was actually one of my favorite
Hmm.
college professors, not only because he was handsome, but that always helps with the
Mhm.
A's. But I think for me, it was the fact that he could have done a better job at apologizing and taking accountability.
Yes.
And that's what we look for in leaders and people of position. But what he did do is change my A minus into an A plus.
Hmm.
And he was more mindful in really encouraging me, congratulating me, and highlighting the strengths of
Yeah.
my communication skills, what I did well, and being more mindful of how he framed the areas of improvement.
Yeah, I get it.
And that to me is something that speaks volumes.
Okay.
And so I would not necessarily say that he said it from a place of, maybe it was a gross assumption, but I don't think that it was malicious.
And so, that takes me to my thing, which is, intent is one thing, but the outcome is what matters. And so I hear you. I think it's gracious of you. I'm glad you got something out of it. I'm old, and so I'm not as gracious any longer. I have no patience for statements that are just not thoughtful. And so, you rebounded well, and that's all that matters. It's your story, not mine. So I respect that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's something that we're talking about from a college perspective,
Yeah,
like,
right. I get it.
right? But in today's world, when we talk about it and we think about it in a grand scheme of aggressions in the workplace, and while I did mention a microaggression earlier, I don't necessarily believe in macro
Hmm.
aggressions. An aggression is an aggression.
Yeah.
And it's intentional. Aggressions are specific to the recipient. You said what you said because you knew that it would impact this person a specific way as a result of their gender, class, social, economic, whatever it is, their gender identity, their race, national origin. It is specific to, the recipient.
Hmm.
And as a result, because of that, it's safe to say that, let's just remove the micro and just call it what it is. It is
Agreed.
an aggression rooted in whatever it is that you intended it to be.
Agreed. So what led you? I made an assumption that having those experiences, that being one, is what led you to your most recent venture as a human resource practitioner and DE&I strategist. Can you talk about that and what exactly that means?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the
Yeah,
question?
for sure. So, what led you to your latest venture, which is human resources practitioner and DE&I? I don't know. I've heard it so many different ways.
Yeah,
DE&I strategist.
all the acronyms, all the
Oh
acronyms.
man, I get twisted. So, yeah, what led
Yes.
you to it, and what does that
Um,
mean exactly?
so I would say yes. All the stars always pointed to human resources. Um, a little bit about my childhood. I am the child of an educator who was also an administrator back home in Haiti of one of the largest and only accredited U.S. language school in on the island. And so it was an English as a second language school that taught adults how to speak and write English, read, English comprehension, and all of that good stuff. They were also the only accredited institution at the time to proctor SATs, TOEFL, MCAT, and all the good exams TOEFL and all the good exams that you need to do in order, from a foreign or American standpoint, in order to get into American universities and colleges. And the other parent is a pastor. But most of my time I spent with the administrator, working with her. And my mom was Mrs. D, and everyone referred to us as Little Mrs. D's. Because every summer I will be in the office with Big Mrs. D, and it was pretty much her shadow, using keys to help correct exams. I was 16 when I sat in on my very first class, overseeing like examinations, making sure people aren't cheating and people saying, "Oh, you're a tough one." But really just shadowing my mom and just seeing how she led her office. I remember right before COVID, I went to a conference, the Haitian Ladies Network conference, which is the largest Haitian gathering for Haitian women professional in the US. And I remember towards the end of an event, I met someone at the door who was waiting on her Uber to go back to the airport and to Haiti. And we got to talking, and she was an attorney. And she said, "Oh, so what was your name again?" And I tell her my full name. And she said, "Hold on. Are you Mrs. D's daughter?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "There is absolutely no way." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I'm an attorney today because of your mom."
Wow.
There was an exam that I needed to take in France, and no one provided that exam for me to actually take the whatever exam that she needed for either for France and England. But my mom went ahead, got the school to get certified, sat down with her and told her, "You are going to take that exam. We're going to make it happen and you're going to pass it." And lo and behold, she did. And she's like, "Anytime you are in Haiti, call me. Anything you need, I will give to you."
That's amazing.
I would run into people till this day and they'll tell me, "I am where I am because of your mom, because of your dad." And because of how they peopled with people, they led with empathy. They treated people like people. They saw people's humanity. They invested in their people. They understood that if things were not, my mother understood that if one of her colleagues are having marital issues at home, that bleeds into the workplace, how you speak to your students, how you speak to your colleagues, how you speak up to me. And so what you're going to do is control your tone, first of all. And now that your tone is controlled, let's talk about the real issue and how can I help you? How can I support you? And how can I be there for you? So that's a long version of it, translated into my very first job straight out of college. I worked for a marketing and branding agency, and they had a 1 to 2 year turnover where people just came and just were like exiting out of the company after 1 to 2 years. And as I'm offboarding staff and I'm asking them, "Well, why are you leaving? We have such a great culture, or we have everything. I mean, there's so much you're going to miss out on when you leave." And that's when they started telling me, "Well, I am experiencing aggressions from my manager," or I'm not receiving this, I'm not receiving that. And my follow-up question would be, well, did you talk to the COO? And people will say, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so I remember then naively thinking, I should go back to school, get my master's degree in human resources, come back to this organization and be their very first human resources person, and it will fix all of their retention problems. And then I got into HR, came back to the organization and did my due and realized, oh, it is more than that.
Yeah.
But it was my entry point. And even before that, undergrad, all of my temporary jobs, all of my friends were working at Target, working at a restaurant here and there. I was working as a human resources assistant, talent acquisition coordinator, etc. So I was always temping in HR without ever having an idea or inclination that I was going to become an HR practitioner. And here we are, 2010, circa 2010, and the rest is history.
Okay, so many of us have started out in a passion, and it turned into burnout and it ruined the passion. How are you ensuring that doesn't happen to you?
Oh, it's already happened.
It's happened. So
The ship has long gone.
So what are you doing about that?
So I think the number one thing that you do about something like that is really understanding that no matter what your background is or what industry that you work in, you need a network. You need people who support you, who are there for you. And for me, it has been friends, family, but most importantly, my therapist.
Yes.
My therapist. My therapist. And the journey to finding the right therapist was not an easy one. It was not a fun one. And I like to liken the journey to finding a therapist as dating and finding your life mate. You will have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find the person that is for you, that you build a life with. And it's similar to therapists. I don't think that it takes more than one session. Well, it does take more than one session because you have to go through the intake process.
Right.
But once you get past the intake process, by session 3 or 4, you should be able to tell whether this person is for you or not for you. And if they're not for you, treat it like a boyfriend. Okay, next. Go back in there. Find the person that is for you, because I mean, in therapy, that is a safe place where you can really unload and talk about the reels of the reels. I remember in the middle circa of the pandemic, I remember once calling my therapist and telling my therapist, I almost left my job today. I think I'm done with HR. And she said, hold on now. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I need you to take some steps back and we're going to talk about it. And this is what we're going to do. And those are the steps that we followed. And so I think that, there is a misconception that people get into HR because they love people. Getting into HR will not lead you to loving people.
That's good.
It actually allows you to see all the shades of people. But what really keeps you in HR is the desire to truly still see the best in people, want to see people succeed, equipping people with the tools that they need to succeed, and really a love for seeing projects too, for streamlining projects, helping grow the organization, problem solving, just being on the front lines, being a first responder. It's not something that you do for income. And if that's your goal of being in HR. I'm just doing it for the paycheck. There are plenty of other things you can do for the paycheck. You are actually hurting the industry for those of the people who do care.
So let me ask you something about that. So what would you say the biggest barrier, because these are your words, the biggest barrier to driving transformative change? What's the barrier to that when you're talking about, because one of the barriers you mentioned is not doing it for a paycheck. That's a barrier, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say another one is?
I would say executive buy-in.
Oh, that's good.
I would say sometimes executive buy-in, because sometimes that transformative change comes with a budget that your CFO might not be willing to sign off on. And it requires people to take accountability that we have to do things differently.
So it does trickle down from the top, as we've always believed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean, because, in an organization, no employee starts a job and comes to work and says, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. I think that every employee is cognizant, protective, and aware of their professional brand. They want to do the best work because, first of all, their work represents them. Secondly, doing a great job keeps them employed, but doing an even better job opens up other opportunities by way of lateral or upward promotions, salary increases, bonus checks, recognition, whatever it is that you have. And so I believe that employees inherently want to do good. I believe that employees inherently want to develop and grow. And alongside that, employees say, hey, and as I give you the best of me during these 8 to 5, 9 to 5, or 10 hours a day that I work, or 40 to 50 hours a week that I work, there are 3 things that I want to know from you. Is that as I give my best to you, can I trust you? Do you care about me? And if you care about me, can I trust you with my well-being at work? And can I trust you with my development? Can I trust you to develop me? Can I trust you to see my performance and promote me accordingly without me having to ask for it? Adjust my pay without me having to ask for it. So those are the 3 main questions that employees just want to know, that, hey, as I'm giving you my best, I need to make sure that you got my back in those 3 areas.
Okay, so wait there, because I want to ask you another question that will take it a step further, which is, HR is such a mystery to all of us. It stands at the top of the hierarchy and seemingly looking down on us. And what you're describing is something that's much more user friendly. What is another way in which HR can become more user friendly to its employees?
Well, we are user friendly. I don't want to speak in generality.
But that's the ideal. The ideal is that you are user friendly and you're there for us. But I'll tell you, as employees, we don't feel that way. As employees, we do not feel that way.
And you are correct. We are humans who provide resources to humans, hence human resources. Yeah, right. And yes, you're correct. For me personally, and I can't speak for everyone in the industry, I will say that when I meet with employees, especially for the first time, my first question to you is, what has been your past experience with human resources professionals?
That's good.
And I ask that question because I understand that HR is not a one-size-fits-all. Everyone in the industry does not operate the same way. And so if at the last 5 organizations that you worked with, you had bad experiences with HR, those experiences, or dare I say traumas, will follow you into this organization. And therefore, as your new HR practitioner, and based on my beliefs and my value systems, I want to understand where you came from, what was your experience there, and then introduce you to myself in terms of, hi, I am your human resources practitioner. I am your success partner in your, life cycle here at the organization. And this is my responsibility, whatever the scope of it is, I'm here to help you. And if it's not in my area of expertise, I will let you know and circle back with you within the same day, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever the window is, and redirect you to the person that needs to help you next. And before I make that connection, I reach out to the next person and say, hey, I'm going to put you in touch with an employee. This is their experience with HR at previous organizations, or even they've had a bad experience within this organization. This way, this next person has an idea. I don't want to say treat with precaution, but be mindful of your interactions with this person there, because there's a saying that says trust is earned, it's not given. But I do believe that it is given, because even if I do everything that is right by the books, unless this employee determines that, and finally I can trust you, it's always going to be a barrier. So my role as an HR practitioner is to always make sure that you always know that when we are in the space, it is safe. However, I do give the disclaimer, if whatever you're going to share breaks any of our policies or the law, in a sense that you tell me, I had this interaction with my manager, but please don't say anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, your manager put the organization at risk. So I might have to look into that.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, that totally makes sense. I think it's a matter of what I hear you saying is that, communication and follow-up are keys to successful HR practices.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about this. I saw this on your LinkedIn too. What is the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act? Is that something that's fairly new?
Yes, it is fairly new, and it's just really an extension or add on to
The family, yeah.
yes, but it gives more specificity around, how to treat or how to support legally the rights of employees who are pregnant. Because as you know, our laws as we have them are just so outdated when you think about Title VII. But the aggressions and the aggressions and levels of racism that we experience in the workforce or in day-to-day American are just so sophisticated that at eyes glance, it would be hard for anyone to say, oh yeah, it falls under Title VII, even though we know that it is racism, even though we know that it is discrimination. And that's where, you hire your attorneys, you file your EEOC claims. But really, I think that we have reached a point where people have the society has become so sophisticated. So we already know what you can't do. So now we work around that to create a higher and more expansive way of doing the same aggressions, committing the same crimes, but in a way that, hey, we can tie it to the existing laws. Yeah. And so with that law particularly, it just really spells out more rights, protective rights that, women who are pregnant have.
Okay,
But
cool.
I mean, it's still developing. The post that you're referring to, actually, I reposted from an employment law attorney.
Okay.
And so it's not something that I have delved into personally,
Yeah.
but that is the gist of
Yeah,
it.
that's good. I was just curious about what would be different. So that gives me an idea. So you
Mhm.
also do marketing and branding of mental health services. Can you say a little bit about that?
So I wouldn't necessarily say mental branding, marketing and branding of mental health services. I always present myself as a mental health advocate,
Okay.
because in my practice of a human resources practitioner, and the example that I gave earlier about my mom, and how she managed, you come to understand. Well, I'll say it this way. And as a licensed clinical social worker, you can have an appreciation for this.
Hmm.
I believe that we are all the trump sum of our life experiences, good or bad. Our life experiences inform us of how the world around us, operates. So if we've had a traumatic life experience, like traumatic, like past upbringing, what have you, we operate from that place of trauma. But when we, you know, and so I think for me, one of the things in my advocacy for mental health is that, we are all influenced by so much more than just who we are,
Hmm.
our job title, our pay, etc., our lifestyle, our upbringing, everything that happens outside of the walls of the 9 to 5. We bring that into the 9 to 5, whether or not our managers, our employers, everyone else acknowledges it. And so, how do we understand, and I'm taking it to a next level, that not all work performance issues, are work performance issues. Sometimes it is the things that are happening on the outside. It might be an undiagnosed ADHD condition, depression, stress, burnout, as you mentioned it. And you have a high performer who is now had a shift in how
Yeah.
they show up, how they
Okay.
perform. Is that someone that we put on a PIP, and because they have not successfully turned around or turned over, we terminate that employee? Or is there a point in time where we sit down with that employee and say, rather than having a performance conversation, hey, is everything okay? Everything's cool. I notice as of lately, you've been keeping to yourself, and I'm not trying to get into your personal life. But if there's anything that I need to know in order to support you to be successful in your role here at X organization, please do let me know. And let's say it continues and now nothing has changed. We now say, hey, we have we've identified, we've noticed X, Y, and Z. And it always has to be skill specific, work specific. Is everything okay? Because, and you just continue the conversation to say, we know this is not you. We know that you are a great performer and etc. But if there's anything that we can do, even if it's outside of the office, maybe you might need a schedule adjustment or whatever it is, let us know, because we want to see you succeed in your role. And more times than often, could be there was a major life event change
Hmm.
in the employee's life, or possibly other things going on that they may or may not disclose. And
Right.
so you can always recommend and remind them of the resources that are available by way of low copays for specialists. Well, no, not really. Don't go that deep. EAP,
Yeah.
EAP support. Like, you might not want to speak with us, but just remember, we offer free EAP services. This is how you can get in contact with someone that you could probably feel more comfortable disclosing that information to, because it's privileged information. You're protected by HIPAA.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a helpful way of handling someone's change in habits, because there are underlying issues, and you can't legally point them out on the job, but to make it skill specific is really, I think that's a key note for someone to take away. Let me ask you one more question before you give us your handles of where you are and how people can find you. What is DEIJ, Jedi, DEI, whatever letters people use, what does it need to do to move us forward? What are the next steps?
So I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. That is DE&I.
Okay.
And I do believe if DE&I, DE&I has everything that it needs.
Okay.
We don't need additional acronyms, although some people would argue and make a good case for accessibility, because people living with disabilities are highly overlooked, especially if those disabilities are invisible. There are two main disabilities that I can think of. You have your mental illnesses, that are one. They're often overlooked. Managers and people are very uncomfortable approaching those conversations in the workspace. I remember working with a client once who believed that it's not necessary. We shouldn't afford employees to use their sick leave for mental health days. They don't need mental health because they have sick days. And I'm just saying, and then the other is, the deaf community, in a sense that oftentimes, forums such as these don't always include captioning for people who either have full hearing impairment or partial hearing impairment. When we think about accessibility, we're talking about the user experience online. If I'm colorblind or have any form of visual impairment, partial or full, how can I access your website? So there is, I understand that community, the deaf community. Oh, and also with the deaf community, there is a rise of a lot of sign language interpreters who are frauds.
Oh,
They're
wow.
not really doing sign language, and whatever they're doing is just gibberish.
Right.
And I don't want to try to make any hand movements to be disrespectful to the community and insensitive to the community, but there is a high rise in that, in the sense that these interpreters, when hiring, are not properly vetted.
Right.
And so we do have an accessibility issue to that end. And I am split. I agree with I am in full support of the community when they say we have to add A for accessibility to
Okay.
the languages. But I do believe that if we are inclusive, if we are truly inclusive to the diversity of our audiences, then the accessibility should be covered under the
Okay.
D and the I. And that's just my perspective.
Yeah, well, it's your answer, so that's what's important.
Yeah. If someone else wants to, if someone from that specific community, and I have a colleague of mine who went through the same certification program as myself, and he's a huge advocate for the deaf community, who's very adamant that the A belongs. And while I am in support of that, but I also believe if done right, we don't need all of the additional language. And personally, the language around, we don't need D&I, we just need to create belonging. If you can't acknowledge why I'm different, I doubt you can actually make me feel
Well, that is a perfect place to land. Please give your social media handles or website or anything that would help you be more accessible to people who are interested in learning more about you.
Yeah, so I am not a huge social media person.
Okay.
But my LinkedIn is pretty much my first name and my last name. And I do believe that my first name and my last name, I'm easy to be found on the LinkedIn. And so, and my email address is pretty much my first name, middle initial L as in love, and my last name at gmail.com for now.
Listen, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I mean, you dug in deep with information that people don't know, and I really do appreciate it. I just again want to thank you for being willing to come on with what I consider short notice, but I'm so glad you thought 2 days was helpful.
I mean, no. This was great. This was fun. You could tell that you could tell it was a 2-day notice. But no. This was fun, and hopefully we can do this again sometime
Yeah,
soon.
absolutely. And thanks again. Take care, Natasha.